Welcome to this explainer. Look, I am incredibly excited about today's topic because it solves a massive real-world problem. Companies right now are spending millions to bring workers back to the office, only for them to sit in total silence with noise-canceling headphones on. It's crazy. So today, we're breaking down how the absolute latest neuroscience is transforming workplace design. But we aren't just going to sit here and talk theory today. We are exploring exactly how to execute this science in physical reality. Because, let's be honest, having a brilliant strategy doesn't mean a thing if your team can't physically interact with it. Okay, let's dive right in. I really want you to think about this question for a second. What actually happens when workplace science stays in a slide deck? You see major corporations spending hundreds of thousands of dollars researching spatial strategy, trying to figure out exactly how to optimize their offices for collaboration and culture. But there is this huge, fatal gap between those high-level insights and the actual physical walls that people walk past every single day. If your strategy is trapped in a PDF somewhere on a hard drive, it's invisible, it's definitely not changing behavior. And that's exactly the problem we're solving today. Here is our quick roadmap for today's explainer. First, the end of guesswork. Second, the neuroscience of space. Third, the missing execution layer. And finally, from insight to wall, where we'll explore how the ultimate experts turn behavioral data into physical reality. All right, part one, the end of guesswork, a shift in workplace design. So for decades, workplace design basically meant looking at org charts, tossing in some open plan philosophies, and honestly, doing a lot of finger crossing. We built offices around desks and HR policies rather than looking at how human teams actually function. But those days, they're totally over. Enter Social-Spatial Design. JLL Design recently partnered with Thomson Harrison, which is an organizational development consultancy, and they drew on some intense research connected to University College London and Sweden's RISE Institute to create this exact framework. Instead of just focusing on individual desks, this methodology applies real behavioral science and evolutionary psychology to treat the team as the primary unit of performance. It's a complete paradigm shift, you guys. We are no longer just guessing where to put the water cooler. We're using deep evolutionary psychology to understand how human beings naturally use physical space to connect and create. And because it's rooted in hard science, it's entirely measurable. JLL's new service tracks 5 very specific workplace performance indicators: collaboration effectiveness, focus and concentration, learning and knowledge sharing, employee belonging and engagement, and overall team performance. By tracking these metrics, we can finally quantify exactly what makes a workspace great. It totally justifies the investment in culture and space because, well, you aren't just buying furniture anymore. You are engineering specific, measurable outcomes in human behavior and team output. Which brings us to part 2, the neuroscience of space, bringing the brain into the office. Let's take a second to really appreciate the weight of this. We are not talking about aesthetics or pretty colors anymore. JLL is using actual electroencephalography, EEG technology, to observe real brain activity in mock office environments. Literally. They're testing variables like lighting, ambient sound, and spatial layouts, and then tracking the exact measurable impacts on a worker's focus, their stress levels, and their ability to collaborate. They can literally see what different environments physically do to our minds. So when a layout is recommended now, it's not just because a designer thought it looked cool and modern. It's because the EEG data proved that this specific configuration lowers cortisol and increases cognitive flow. It's undeniable, hard science. And this quote right here brilliantly illustrates the urgency of this entire shift. As artificial intelligence automates our routine tasks, human cognitive and collaborative skills are becoming your absolute most valuable assets. You need your people to do the things AI simply can't do: innovate, connect, empathize, and brainstorm. Therefore, having an evidence-based workplace design isn't just a nice-to-have perk anymore. It is an absolutely crucial driver of business performance. Honestly, if your space isn't optimizing human cognition right now, you are falling behind. Now, this isn't some overnight magic trick. It's a compounding return on investment. According to the data, within the first 1 to 3 months of implementing these neuroscience-backed changes, you're going to see perception shifts. Basically, people just feel better about the space. Then from 3 to 6 months, you get behavioral adaptation. Teams are actually working differently, collaborating way more naturally. And by the 12 to 24-month mark, those behaviors solidify into highly tangible retention and performance impacts. You keep your absolute best people, and they do their absolute best work. The long-term ROI here is deeply understood and completely predictable. Moving on to part 3. The missing execution layer, strategy versus reality. So, all of that research from JLL is undeniably groundbreaking, but it also uncovers a pretty fatal flaw in the industry. There is this stark contrast between design strategy and physical execution. On one side, your strategy is full of amazing theoretical intent, but it lives entirely in abstract slide decks. On the flip side, you have the physical walls. The wall is a tangible expression of your culture. It's literally the only thing that actually drives behavior. An abstract strategy cannot change how a team operates until someone physically interacts with it. The design thinking is the hard, valuable parts, absolutely, but it is really only half the battle. And that brings us to a really hard truth. A strategy that stays in a deck simply doesn't change behavior. The visual identity that makes a brand new hire feel like they belong, the spatial cues that spark a spontaneous brainstorming session, the specific wayfinding that prompts an employee to say, hey, let me find the right zone for this task. None of that matters until it becomes a physical mural or a large-scale environmental graphic. You have got to close that gap between the brilliant insight and the actual physical outcome. And that leads us perfectly into part 4, from insight to wall, the frictionless execution layer.
So, how do you actually get this done? Well, you bring in the absolute experts in the space, East Coast Mural Pros. Companies need a frictionless execution layer to manifest their culture into reality. And we don't compete with your design firm, we are pure execution. If you've just paid top dollar for a brilliant social spatial strategy, East Coast Mural Pros slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. We take that precise, neuroscience-backed intent, we match the colors and textures flawlessly, and we physically build the genius. We are that missing link, the elite integration partner that turns high-level behavioral data into a physical, architectural reality.
And we do it with astonishing frictionless speed. It literally takes just one single day to print and install a 400 square foot branded environment. You don't need some multi-week, massive, disruptive renovation budget to change the behavioral cues in your office. In just 24 hours, your strategy moves from a theoretical slide deck to a massive physical reality that greets your team the very next morning. It's incredible. Then there is the technical quality, which for us is completely non-negotiable. 600 plus DPI resolution. We are talking about direct-to-wall printing that is entirely seam-free. Look, this isn't that cheap vinyl that's going to peel at the edges in 6 months. This is high-definition art rendered directly onto your physical space. Because when you are executing a premium workplace strategy backed by cutting-edge neuroscience, the physical quality of the execution has to perfectly mirror the brilliance of that data. And our logistical superiority really comes down to one single concept: zero. Zero curing time. We use low-odor, eco-friendly inks, which means the space is usable immediately with absolutely zero disruption to your team. And here's the best part. When your corporate strategy naturally evolves in a few years, there is zero stripping and zero sticky residue to deal with. The wall is simply painted right over and reprinted. It is a completely agile execution layer that updates exactly as fast as your business does. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative question to chew on. Is your workplace strategy actually changing human behavior right now, or is it just sitting quietly in a presentation? The companies that are going to win the future of work won't just plan their culture, they are going to physically print it onto their walls. If you are ready to finally bridge that gap with flawless, expert execution, you need to reach out to East Coast Mural Pros today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you all next time.